I tried to hug my wife after a long day. She pushed me away and said, "You think you earned that?" By morning, I left a note, "Earn my return." What I discovered next, about her, her sister, and the man she'd been seeing for 10 years, made me question everything, including my own son. My name is Dean Pritchard. I'm 44 years old, and I run a small accounting firm in Columbus, Ohio. For 17 years, I thought I had built something solid. A beautiful home, a successful business, 2 kids I would die for, and a wife who I believed loved me back. I was wrong about that last part. That Tuesday started normally enough. I came home exhausted from tax season preparations, shoulders tight from hunching over spreadsheets all day. Nadine stood at the kitchen counter, her back to me, that familiar floral robe wrapped around her. Shane, our 16-year-old, was upstairs doing homework. Haley, 13, had already gone to bed. I walked up behind Nadine and reached out to hug her. Nothing dramatic, just the kind of embrace a husband gives his wife after a long day. But the moment my arms touched her shoulders, she recoiled. She actually stepped away from me like I carried some disease. "What do you think you're doing?" Nadine's voice was ice cold. "I was trying to hug my wife," I said, confused. "Is that a crime now?" She turned to face me, and what I saw in her eyes wasn't anger. It was something worse. It was contempt. "You think you earned that?" she asked. "You come home, barely talk to me, buried in your numbers all day, and you think a hug makes everything fine?" I stood frozen. 17 years of marriage, and she looked at me like I was a stranger asking for spare change. "Nadine, what's going on with you?" "Nothing's going on with me, Dean. Maybe something's finally going right." She walked past me without another word, taking her tea upstairs. I stood in that kitchen for 20 minutes, replaying every moment, wondering when my wife had become someone I didn't recognize. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in my home office, staring at our wedding photo on the shelf. By 4 in the morning, I had made my decision. I packed one bag with essentials and wrote a note on the kitchen counter where she'd find it with her morning coffee. For words, earn my return. Dean. I left before sunrise, before the kids woke up, before I could second-guess myself. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stay in a house where my own wife flinched at my touch. I drove for 3 hours without stopping. The sun came up somewhere around Zanesville, painting the highway in shades of orange I would have appreciated on any other day. But that morning, all I could see was Nadine's face, that look of pure disgust when I tried to hold her. I found a motel outside of Cambridge, one of those places where nobody asks questions and the coffee tastes like yesterday's regrets. The room smelled like cigarette smoke and pine air freshener, but it had a bed and a lock on the door. That was enough. For the first few hours, I just sat there. No television, no phone calls, just silence and the hum of the ancient heating unit. My mind kept replaying the last year, searching for clues I might have missed. The late nights Nadine claimed she spent with her sister Denise. The business trips that seemed to multiply. The way she started sleeping with her phone under her pillow. Around noon, I finally turned on my phone. 14 missed calls. 8 from Nadine, 4 from Shane, 2 from my brother Stuart. I ignored them all and opened our family phone plan account instead. What I found made my stomach turn. One number appeared over and over in Nadine's call history. Always after 10 at night. Always when I was asleep or traveling for client meetings. The calls lasted anywhere from 45 minutes to 2 hours. This wasn't a friend catching up. This was something else entirely. I didn't recognize the number, but the area code was local. Whoever this person was, they lived close enough to be dangerous. My hands trembled as I scrolled through 3 months of records. The pattern was meticulous. They never called during family dinners. Never on weekends when I was home all day. Whoever Nadine was talking to, they knew my schedule. They were careful, calculated. I wrote down the number on a motel notepad and stared at it for a long time. Part of me wanted to call it right then, demand answers, hear the voice of the man who might be destroying my marriage. But I wasn't ready for that conversation. Not yet. Instead, I called my brother Stuart. "Dean, where the heck are you?" Stuart's voice was tense. Nadine called me crying, said you left in the middle of the night. Shane's worried sick. "I'm fine," I said. "I just needed some space." Space from what? What happened? I told him about the kitchen, about the hug, about the words that felt like a slap across my face. Stuart listened without interrupting, which wasn't like him at all. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that stopped my heart. Dean, I wasn't going to say anything, but maybe now's the time. Last month, I saw Nadine at that Italian place on 5th Street. She wasn't alone. Some guy in a suit. I figured it was a client meeting or something, but they were sitting pretty close. Did you see his face? Tall guy, maybe mid-40s. Gray at the temples. Looked like money. I thanked Stuart and hung up. My wife wasn't just cold. She wasn't just distant. She was living a double life, and everyone seemed to know except me. I looked at that phone number again. Tomorrow, I would find out exactly who had stolen my wife's heart. Tonight, I would plan. The next morning, I woke up with a purpose. No more sitting in motel rooms, feeling sorry for myself. I needed answers, and there was only one way to get them. I drove back toward Columbus, but didn't go home. Instead, I parked outside a private investigation office I'd found online the night before. The building was unremarkable, sandwiched between a dry cleaner and a sandwich shop. Inside, a man named Vince DeLuca sat behind a cluttered desk, looking exactly like you'd expect a former cop to look. Tired eyes, thick hands, and a wedding ring tan line on his finger. Divorce cases are my bread and butter, Vince said after I explained the situation. Give me that phone number in a week. I'll tell you everything about this guy, including his shoe size. I handed over the number and a photo of Nadine from my wallet. Vince studied it for a moment, then nodded. Pretty woman. They usually are in these cases. I'll be in touch. While Vince worked his magic, I checked into a different motel closer to the city. I couldn't stay away forever. Shane and Haley needed to know their father hadn't abandoned them. But I wasn't ready to face Nadine. Not until I knew exactly what I was dealing with. That evening, I met my friend Terrence at a bar near his office. We'd known each other since college, back when life was simple and the future seemed limitless. He was the only person besides Stuart I could trust with this. You look terrible, Terrence said, sliding a beer across the table. Feel worse than I look, I replied. I told him everything. The rejection in the kitchen, the phone records, Stuart's sighting at the restaurant. Terrence listened without interruption, his expression growing darker with each detail. Dean, I need to tell you something, he said when I finished. I wasn't sure if it meant anything, but now I think it does. About 2 months ago, I ran into Nadine at that charity gala downtown. The one for the children's hospital. You were supposed to go, remember? But you had that emergency with the Patterson account. I remember. What about it? She was there with some guy. Introduced him as a colleague from her sister's company. But the way they moved together, the way he touched the small of her back when they walked, that wasn't professional, Dean. I convinced myself I was reading too much into it. What did he look like? Tall, good-looking in that polished corporate way. Gray hair, expensive suit. Drove a silver Lexus. My hands tightened around my beer glass. This matched Stuart's description perfectly. The same man, appearing at multiple events with my wife while I worked late to provide for our family. Did you catch his name? Terrence frowned, trying to remember. Douglas something. I think she said Douglas. Douglas. Now the ghost had a name. I thanked Terrence and drove back to my motel, my mind racing. This wasn't a recent affair. This was something that had been building for months, maybe longer, right under my nose. They had been careful, choosing events where I wouldn't be present, constructing alibis that would never raise suspicion. But careful people make mistakes. Everyone does eventually. And with Vince digging into that phone number, and now a first name to work with, those mistakes were about to surface. I sat on the edge of my bed and pulled out my phone. Shane had texted me 3 times, asking where I was and if I was okay. My son, the boy I'd raised for 16 years, worried about his father. I typed back a simple message. I'm safe. I love you. I'll explain everything soon. Whatever happened next, my children would know the truth. They deserve that much. Vince called me 4 days later. His voice was flat, professional, but I could hear something underneath it. Sympathy, maybe, or just the weariness of a man who delivered bad news too many times. Got your information, he said. You're going to want to sit down for this. I was already sitting in my motel room, but I gripped the edge of the mattress anyway. The number belongs to a prepaid phone, but I traced the purchase to a credit card. The car belongs to a man named Douglas Kemp, 46 years old, partner at Kemp and Harrington Law Firm downtown, specializes in corporate mergers and acquisitions. Divorced twice, no kids. Net worth somewhere north of $4 million. Douglas Kemp, a name I'd heard before, but couldn't quite place. There's more, Vince continued. I did some digging into his background. Kemp has a reputation. Likes married women, specifically ones whose husbands are too busy working to notice. This isn't his first rodeo, Dean. 3 years ago, he was named in a divorce case as the other man. The husband tried to sue him for alienation of affection, but Kemp's lawyers got it dismissed. A professional homewrecker. That's who my wife had chosen over me. What about Nadine? Any evidence they've been meeting in person? I've got photographs from last week, before you called me. They met at a hotel outside the city, the Marriott near the airport. Stayed for 3 hours in the middle of the afternoon while you were probably at work and your kids were at school. 3 hours. In a hotel room. While I ran numbers for clients who trusted me to handle their finances, my wife was handling something else entirely. Send me everything, I said. Photos, records, all of it. Already in your email. Dean, one more thing. I looked into your family's finances like you asked. There's a second mortgage on your house, taken out 8 months ago for $180,000. The signature is your wife's, but the paperwork lists both of you as borrowers. I felt the room spin. I never signed anything like that. I figured, you might want to check your kids' college funds too. Your wife is listed as the primary account holder on both. After Vince hung up, I sat in silence for a long time. The woman I married, the mother of my children, had been draining our finances while sleeping with a millionaire lawyer. It didn't make sense. If Douglas Kemp was so wealthy, why did Nadine need our money? Then it hit me. She wasn't stealing for him. She was building her escape fund, a safety net for when she finally left me, made up of money I had earned through years of 70-hour work weeks. I opened my laptop and logged into the education savings accounts. The balance in Shane's fund, $12. Haley's fund, $37. Between them, I had saved over $90,000. Gone. All of it gone. My hands trembled, but not from sadness. From rage. Cold, focused rage. I picked up my phone and called my own lawyer. It was time to stop being a victim and start being the man my children needed me to be. My lawyer worked fast. Within 48 hours, he had subpoenaed the bank records and discovered exactly where our money had gone. The second mortgage payments were being deposited into a private account under Nadine's maiden name. The children's education funds had been liquidated over the course of 2 years, transferred in small amounts to avoid detection. But the real shock came when I finally decided to confront someone who might have answers. Nadine's sister, Denise. I found her at her apartment on the east side of Columbus. She opened the door with a look of genuine surprise, clearly not expecting me. Dean, what are you doing here? Nadine's been worried sick. She says you just vanished without any explanation. Can I come in? I asked. We need to talk. Denise hesitated, then stepped aside. Her apartment was small but tidy, filled with photographs of family gatherings where I now appeared as the fool who didn't know his wife was cheating. I know about Douglas Kemp, I said, not bothering with small talk. Denise's face went pale. She tried to recover, but the damage was done. Her reaction told me everything I needed to know. I don't know what you're talking about, she stammered. Don't lie to me, Denise. I have phone records. I have photographs. I have emails going back over a year. What I want to know is how long you've been covering for her. Denise sank on her couch, her hands trembling. For a long moment, she didn't speak. When she finally looked up, her eyes were wet with tears. 10 years, she whispered. The words hit me like a freight train. 10 years. Not months. Not a year or two. A decade. What did you just say? They've been seeing each other for 10 years, Dean. On and off at first, then more regularly after Haley was born. I told her stop. I begged her to end it. But she said Douglas made her feel alive in a way you never could. I stood frozen, trying to process the magnitude of this betrayal. Shane was 16. If this affair had been going on for 10 years, that meant it started when he was only 6 years old. When Haley was just 3. Did she ever mention anything about Shane? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Denise looked away, and that small gesture answered my question before she spoke. Dean, I think you should ask Nadine about that directly. Tell me, Denise. I deserve to know. She closed her eyes. About 5 years ago, Nadine got drunk at my birthday party. She told me something she made me swear never to repeat. She said Shane might not be yours. She was seeing Douglas before you two got married. There was some overlap. The room started spinning. My son, the boy I had coached in Little League, helped with homework, taught to drive. The boy who had my last name and called me Dad. He might not be mine. Did she ever confirm it? Did she do a test? She refused. She said she didn't want to know. She said it didn't matter because you were raising him anyway. I walked out of Denise's apartment without another word. My legs carried me to my car, but I couldn't drive. I just sat there, hands on the steering wheel, staring at nothing. 10 years. My wife had been living a double life for 10 years. And my son, the child I loved more than anything, might be the biological child of the man she was sleeping with. I pulled out my phone and searched for DNA testing services. There was a clinic 20 minutes away that offered same-day paternity tests. All I needed was a sample from Shane. Tomorrow, I would know the truth. And whatever that truth was, it would change everything. Getting Shane's DNA was easier than I expected. I called him and asked if he wanted to grab lunch, just the two of us. He agreed immediately, clearly relieved to hear from me after days of silence. We met at a diner near his school. Shane looked tired, dark circles under his eyes, his usual easy smile replaced by worry. "Dad, what's going on?" he asked before we even ordered. "Mom says you're having some kind of crisis. She says you need space, but she won't explain anything. I've been going crazy." "I'm fine, son. Your mother and I are having some problems, but that has nothing to do with how much I love you and your sister." "What kind of problems?" I wasn't ready to tell him everything. Not yet. Not until I knew whether the boy sitting across from me shared my blood. "Adult problems," I said. "Things that happened between your mother and me. But I promise, when the time is right, I'll explain everything. For now, I just needed to see you." We talked for an hour about school, about his plans for college, about the girl he'd started dating. Normal father-son conversation, except nothing about it felt normal anymore. When Shane got up to use the restroom, I grabbed his soda cup and slipped it into a plastic bag I'd brought specifically for this purpose. His saliva would be enough for the test. 2 days later, I sat in the DNA clinic waiting room, my heart pounding against my ribs. The technician called my name and handed me an envelope. Her face was professionally neutral, but something in her eyes suggested she knew this moment would change my life. I opened the envelope right there in the waiting room. Probability of paternity, 0%. The alleged father is excluded as the biological father of the tested child. 0%. Not low probability. 0. Shane wasn't my son. He had never been my son. For 16 years, I had poured my heart and soul into raising another man's child while that man was sleeping with my wife. I don't remember driving back to my hotel. I don't remember parking the car or walking to my room. The next thing I knew, I was sitting on the edge of the bed, holding the results in hands that wouldn't stop shaking. Douglas Kemp wasn't just Nadine's lover. He was Shane's father, and everyone knew except me. I thought about Denise, who had kept this secret for years. I thought about Nadine, who had watched me bond with Shane, who had let me sacrifice and provide and love, knowing the whole time that I was raising her lover's child. But most of all, I thought about Shane. That boy loved me. He called me Dad without hesitation, came to me with his problems, trusted me completely, and none of that was his fault. He was as much a victim in this as I was. I made a decision in that hotel room. Shane would always be my son in every way that mattered. Biology doesn't make a father. Showing up does. And I had shown up every single day for 16 years. But Nadine was going to pay for this. Not with anger, not with screaming, but with consequences. Legal, financial, and social consequences that would follow her for the rest of her life. I picked up my phone and called my lawyer. It was time to file for divorce. Nadine called me 2 weeks after I left. Not to apologize, not to explain, but to propose marriage counseling. Her voice was sweet, almost pleading, a tone I hadn't heard in years. "Dean, please. Whatever's happening between us, we can work through it. I've already made an appointment with a therapist, Dr. Vivian Crane. She comes highly recommended. Just give us 1 session. For the kids, if nothing else. For the kids." She knew exactly which buttons to push. Against my better judgment, I agreed. Not because I believe in reconciliation, but because I wanted to see what game she was playing. My lawyer had advised me to avoid direct confrontation until the divorce papers were ready. This seemed like a safe middle ground. The therapist office was in an upscale building near the Short North District. Leather chairs, soft lighting, abstract art on the walls. Dr. Vivian Crane greeted us with a warm smile that felt rehearsed. "I'm so glad you both decided to come," she said, gesturing toward a pair of facing armchairs. "Nadine has told me a little about what's been happening. Dean, I understand you left the home rather suddenly a few weeks ago. I noticed she didn't ask for my side of the story. She already had Nadine's version and seemed satisfied with it. I left because my wife made it clear she didn't want me there, I said calmly. Dr. Crane nodded sympathetically, but her eyes stayed on me with an intensity that felt more like evaluation than understanding. Nadine mentioned that you've been under a lot of stress at work, that you've become emotionally distant over the past year. Would you say that's accurate? I looked at Nadine, who sat with her hands folded, the picture of wounded innocence. No, I said. I would say that's a convenient story that ignores several important facts, such as the fact that my wife has been having an affair for the past 10 years with a man named Douglas Kemp, such as the fact that she's stolen nearly $200,000 from our family through a fraudulent second mortgage and by emptying our children's college funds, such as the fact that our son Shane may not be biologically mine. The room went silent. Nadine's face drained of color. Dr. Crane's professional composure slipped for just a moment before she recovered. Those are very serious allegations, Dean, the therapist said carefully. Nadine, would you like to respond? Nadine's eyes darted between me and Dr. Crane. I could see her calculating, trying to figure out how much I actually knew. He's having some kind of breakdown, Nadine said finally. This is exactly what I was worried about. He's become paranoid, delusional. He needs help, Vivian. Vivian, not Dr. Crane. First name basis. And suddenly I understood. This wasn't therapy. This was a setup. Dr. Vivian Crane wasn't a neutral counselor. She was Nadine's friend, probably recruited to document my supposed mental instability for the divorce proceedings. I stood up slowly, buttoning my jacket. I think we're done here, I said. Dean, please sit down, Dr. Crane urged. Running away from difficult conversations won't solve anything. I'm not running away. I'm recognizing a trap when I see one. Dr. Crane, how long have you known my wife? Before today, I mean. The therapist's hesitation told me everything. I don't see how that's relevant to our session. It's relevant because this isn't a session. It's an ambush. You were supposed to diagnose me with something, weren't you? Depression, paranoia, maybe a personality disorder. Something Nadine could use in court to paint me as unstable. Nadine stood up, her mask of innocence finally breaking. You think you're so smart, Dean. You think you figured everything out, but you have no idea what's coming. I smiled at her. It wasn't a happy smile. Actually, I know exactly what's coming. I'm filing for divorce tomorrow, and I have documentation of everything. The affair, the financial fraud, the forged mortgage documents. By the time my lawyer is finished, you'll be lucky to keep the clothes on your back. I walked out of that office without looking back. Behind me, I heard Nadine's voice rising in anger, demanding that Dr. Crane do something. But there was nothing left to do. The game was over, and she had finally realized she wasn't going to win. I didn't plan to tell Shane about the DNA test. Some secrets, I thought, were better left buried. But fate had other plans. 3 days after the therapy disaster, Shane showed up at my hotel room. I don't know how he found me. Probably tracked my phone through the family account. But there he was, standing in the hallway with red-rimmed eyes and a printed email in his hand. Is this true? He asked, holding up the paper. I stepped aside to let him in. The email was from Nadine to Douglas Kemp, dated 2 years ago. Shane must have found it on his mother's computer. You need to stop pressuring me about telling Shane. The email read, he's better off not knowing you're his real father. Dean has been good to him. Let's not destroy that. I sat down heavily on the edge of the bed. Of all the ways I imagined this moment, this wasn't one of them. Shane, sit down. Please. He remained standing, his whole body trembling. Just tell me the truth. Is Douglas Kemp my biological father? I couldn't lie to him. Not after everything. Yes. I had a DNA test done last week. The results confirmed it. Shane's legs gave out. He collapsed into the chair by the window, staring at me with a devastation I will never forget. You're not my dad? I am your dad, I said firmly. I've been your dad for 16 years. I taught you to ride a bike. I sat with you through every fever, every nightmare, every broken heart. I've loved you since the moment you were born. A piece of paper doesn't change any of that. But biologically, biology is just genetics. It's not love. It's not sacrifice. It's not showing up every single day. Douglas Kemp provided some DNA. I provided everything else. So you tell me, Shane, who's your real father? The boy broke down. He crossed the room and fell into my arms, sobbing like he hadn't since he was a little kid. I held him tight, my own eyes burning. I don't care about him, Shane said through his tears. I don't care about any of it. You're my dad. You've always been my dad. And I always will be. Nothing changes that. Not your mother's lies. Not some test results. Nothing. We stayed like that for a long time. When Shane finally pulled back, his face was calmer, more resolved. What happens now, he asked. I'm divorcing your mother. It's gonna get ugly. She's gonna say things about me, try to turn you and Haley against me. I need you to be strong. What about Haley? Does she know? No. And I'm not sure she needs to. She's only 13. This is between your mother and me. You kids shouldn't have to carry our burdens. Shane nodded slowly. I want to stay with you. When the divorce happens, I want to live with you. That might be complicated. Your mother will fight for custody. Then we fight back, Shane said, and in that moment I saw myself in him. Not genetics, but character. The way a man faces adversity. Yeah, I agreed. We fight back. Together. The divorce papers arrived at Nadine's door on a Thursday morning. I know because my lawyer called me the moment the process server confirmed delivery. She's going to be served with everything, he said. The affair documentation, the financial fraud evidence, the forged mortgage papers. Her attorney is going to have a very interesting day. I expected Nadine to call me screaming. Instead, she showed up at my hotel room that evening, mascara streaked down her face, looking nothing like the cold woman who had pushed me away in our kitchen. Dean, please, she begged the moment I opened the door. We can work this out. I made mistakes, terrible mistakes, but we have 17 years together. We have children. Doesn't that mean anything to you? I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. It meant everything to me. That's why I worked 70-hour weeks to provide for this family. That's why I missed vacations and holidays to make sure Shane and Haley had college funds. Funds you emptied, by the way. I can explain about the money. Can you explain about Douglas Kemp? Can you explain 10 years of lies? Can you explain letting me raise his son while you two laughed behind my back? Nadine flinched like I'd slapped her. I never laughed at you. Neither did Douglas. It wasn't like that. Then tell me what it was like. Help me understand how a woman looks her husband in the eye every day for a decade while sleeping with another man. She was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. I was unhappy, Dean. You were always working, always stressed. Douglas made me feel seen. He made me feel alive. So instead of talking to me, instead of suggesting counseling or separation, you chose to betray everything we built. You chose to steal from your own children. You chose to let me bond with a boy who wasn't mine while keeping me in the dark. Shane loves you. That part was real. Shane loves me because I showed up. Every single day, I showed up. That's what fathers do. Douglas Kemp didn't show up. He just took what he wanted and let someone else do the hard work. Nadine reached for my hand, but I stepped back. Dean, I'm begging you. Don't destroy our family over this. I'll end things with Douglas. I'll pay back the money somehow. We can start over. I looked at this woman I had loved for 17 years. Part of me wanted to believe her. Part of me remembered the girl I married, the mother of my daughter, the life we had built together. But that life was built on lies. And you can't rebuild on a foundation that's already rotten. No, I said quietly. We can't start over. You had 1,000 chances to tell me the truth, and you chose deception every single time. The divorce is happening. The only question now is whether we do this civilly or whether I release every piece of evidence I have to our friends, our families, and your precious Douglas Kemp's professional network. Nadine's expression hardened. The mask of the grieving wife slipped away, replaced by something colder. You'll regret this, Dean. I'll make sure of it. I already have regrets, Nadine. 17 years of them. But walking away from you isn't one of them. I closed the door in her face. Through the wood, I heard her standing there for a long moment before her footsteps finally retreated down the hallway. It was over. Not the legal battle. That would take months. But the marriage. The pretense. The hope that somehow this could be fixed. I sat down on the edge of my bed and felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. The weight of a decade of lies was no longer mine to carry. Whatever came next, I would face it as a free man. The divorce was finalized on a crisp October morning. Judge Harrison reviewed the evidence, listened to both attorneys, and made his ruling. I received the house, primary custody of Haley, and joint custody of Shane. Nadine was ordered to repay the stolen education funds from her share of the marital assets, which left her with almost nothing. Douglas Kemp didn't fare much better. When his law firm learned about the forged mortgage documents, evidence my lawyer strategically shared with their ethics board, they launched an internal investigation. He wasn't disbarred, but he was forced into early retirement. His reputation in Columbus legal circles was destroyed. Nadine moved in with her sister Denise. Last I heard, Douglas had ended their relationship. Apparently, the affair was only exciting when it was secret. Once everything came into the light, he discovered he didn't actually want to build a life with my ex-wife. He just wanted the thrill of taking something that belonged to someone else. Shane graduated high school that spring with honors. He gave a speech at the ceremony about the importance of integrity, about how a man's character is defined not by his circumstances, but by his choices. I sat in the audience with Haley beside me, tears running down my face. After the ceremony, Shane found me in the crowd. "Thanks, Dad," he said, hugging me tight. "For everything. For staying. For fighting. For being my father even when you didn't have to be." "I always had to be," I replied. "That was never a choice. That was just love." Haley adjusted better than I expected. She was angry at her mother for a while, confused about why our family had broken apart. But kids are resilient, and with time and patience, she came to understand that some relationships can't be saved, no matter how much we might want them to be. I started dating again about 5 months after the divorce. Nothing serious at first, just coffee with a woman named Rebecca who I met through my accountant's wife. She was divorced too, with a teenage son of her own. We understood each other's wounds in a way that felt comfortable rather than forced. One evening, sitting on my back porch watching the sun set over the yard I had almost lost, I thought about that night in the kitchen. The night Nadine pushed me away and asked if I thought I had earned her affection. The truth was, I had spent 17 years earning things that should have been freely given. Love shouldn't require payment. Respect shouldn't be a transaction. A marriage shouldn't be a ledger of debts and credits. I had written "earn my return" on that note because I was angry and hurt. But looking back, I realized that wasn't really what I wanted. I didn't want Nadine to earn anything. I wanted her to love me the way I had loved her, unconditionally, completely, without keeping score. She couldn't do that. Maybe she never could. But somewhere out there, someone would. And in the meantime, I had my children, my integrity, and a future that belonged entirely to me. That was enough. That was more than enough.